Okay.
Chicka, chicka. Yeah.
Kill Bill and Rev. We don't suck.
Mike Tyson, Reich Bison, Nike Tyson, Reich Bison.
Hey, yo. Hey, yo, check it out right here. I said check it out right here. It's we don't suck. We don't suck. We don't suck. We don't suck. The spookiest podcast on the internet. Welcome back to the We Don't Suck podcast episode.
Man, it feels good to be a gangster, brother.
Bill,
Yeah.
one of my favorite pastas, Pomodoro. What's your favorite pasta?
Global warming. Oh, and creepypasta, spooky spaghetti.
Oh, spoopy time. Put like a spoopy time thing behind.
I like how we're just really bringing this in with the ambiance. You know, we're really hitting the ambiance hard.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, dude, I'm a big fan, or I was a big fan of creepypasta growing up. You know, in the early 2000s when I was born.
Okay. I didn't read spoopy pastas that early on in my life, but I think I first started reading them like maybe 2008, 2009, something like
That's
that.
what I meant, early 2010s when I was born. I'm sorry, I always get those two mixed up.
Okay, yeah.
Because I'm an idiot.
Okay. So, Bill, I understand that you've curated a list that you're not necessarily familiar with these creepypastas. You just kind of...
I'm familiar with a few of them, but not all of them. I've picked out some by name and a few that are of quality content, but I also have a list of like a couple short ones to get us started. So I was thinking, do you want to get started, or do you want me to? Like, we could do it however you want to do, baby.
We can do either or, Kill Bill the curator. Which one do you want first?
Well, it would be rude of me to make my guest on my podcast.
Yeah.
Read first. So I will read the first of the stories for everyone. So I just want everybody to just before we do anything, before we get into this podcast creepypasta experience, I want you to sit down, maybe draw a bath of just boiling hot water.
This is a last podcast on the left reference.
Just super hot, like it'll hurt, like it'll scald you, you know, and just dunk your face first in it, just to exfoliate and just remind you that you're still alive. We all on the same page?
Dom Perignon, I don't need Chris. Tanqueray and Alizé, I don't need shit.
Okay, now just roll up a big old fatty.
I smoke that good shit. I stay high all the time. I'm on some hood shit.
Yeah, roll up a big old fatty of that bubonic chronic plague. Okay?
Yeah, that blunt.
And take the biggest blowtorch you've got and just that bitch up, you know, because you want to be real fucked up when you're getting spooked out.
Yeah, you gotta have that big mama blunt. Can't be fucking around with no little pussy boy ass blunts. You gotta go with that big mama blunt.
Get that fucking Martin Lawrence blunt, you know what I'm saying? Wait, was Martin Lawrence Big Mama? Who was Big Mama?
All right, which one we going with first, my friendo?
I'm gonna read Darkness in the Rearview Mirror by, it doesn't say who wrote it.
Have Thunderstrike effects here.
Thunder!
Whoa, that's scary. I'm shedding.
Okay. In the summer of 2013, I found myself driving home alone on Highway 902 from a party. It was almost midnight, and needless to say, it was pitch black. As was usual at night, I was on edge. I had the radio off. I could hear nothing but the muffled roar of tires on pavement and the dull hum of the engine. I stole a glance into the middle rearview mirror and saw nothing but darkness through the back window. I know that I looked backward and saw nothing. I'm sure of it. Just the seemingly endless blackness of the night. I remember it so clearly because not 10 seconds later, a car passed me to the left, headlights on. I had one of those sudden adrenaline rushes, like when you think you see a person outside your bedroom window when it's really just a tree, or when you start awake at night with the feeling of falling. 10 seconds earlier, nothing had been behind me. Suddenly, a car. I drove the rest of the way home, shivering and knowing something was off. The next morning, I found 2 sets of scratches near the back of my van. One was on the left rear, one was on the right. The car was pretty old. They could have been there for months, but that was the first time I distinctly remembered seeing them. In hindsight, there are 2 possibilities of what happened that night. Possibility 1, by some glitch in reality or something paranormal, this other car had somehow appeared behind me within 10 seconds of me checking my mirror, like some weird ghost crap or something. Great writing. However, the second option is what made my blood run cold whenever I consider it. It didn't even occur to me until months after the fact, but it makes me dread driving alone at night even more. Possibility 2. The car was normal. It had approached me from the rear and passed me to my left. However, something large and wide and as black as the night had been clinging to the rear of my car, obscuring my view through the window and leaving deep scratches on the sides. And I had inadvertently driven it home with me.
Squirrels.
Dude, that was good. Spooky. Real spooky. Or maybe he just didn't see the car coming the whole time and he's just fucking crazy.
Dude, that made my piss run freezing.
It made my piss boil.
All right, I've got the next one. It's called...
Yeah, please.
Instant messaging.
Instant messaging.
Hey, our viewers will know what instant messaging is, right? Yeah, guys. It's what we all do, all the time.
At all times, we're millennials.
It all started on the 14th night of March, the night of my parents' 20th wedding anniversary. It was a wonderful sunny day, if memory serves, surprisingly warm for before the beginning of spring. The beautiful weather was perfect for the atmosphere of the day. Being married for 20 years is obviously a momentous occasion, so my parents had booked a table at our favorite Italian restaurant.
Love Italians.
Yeah. Of course. This was a formal occasion, so I had my best suit on. It was 5:33, and I was just straightening my tie when my phone went off. I'd received a message. That's strange, I thought. That never happens. I have no friends. I checked the message. It was from Mum. So this is a British thing.
Yeah.
It was from my mum.
Me mum.
It was from me mem. It was quite a jumble of numbers and letters, but through the vocabulary stew, I could make out the legible phrase, "Please help me." Yeah, autocorrect does that sometimes.
Yeah.
It should go without saying that this worried me greatly, so I immediately replied, "Are you okay?" Just as instantly, I got another text which read, "Oops, pocket text." I sighed with all the relief I had and continued to prepare myself. A few minutes later, I received yet another message, this time from my dad. I checked the text, and once again it was a massive mixture of letters and numbers with the phrase, "Please help me," concealed within. Creepy though this was, my dad was always a joker, so I presumed he was just joking around, and until I was sent another text saying, "Oops, pocket text." Now, this sparked panic. Pure, unmistakable panic.
Every time I see the phrase pocket text, I'm like, oh God. I gotta lose my shit.
Fuck, their phones aren't well secured. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Exactly half a minute passed when I received the exact same message from my sister. This could not be coincidental. They were fucking with me. Oh, sorry. It just couldn't. In a state of sheer anxiety, I started to run to the restaurant.
Sprinting.
I made it about a quarter of the way before I was stopped by a police officer. "Main road's closed," he said. Huge car crash. This was the exact moment I realized just what had happened. I demanded to see the wreckage. A request I'm surprised was allowed. When I got there, it wasn't the remnants of the car that caught my eye, not the flames billowing from the destroyed vehicle. No. I was horrified to see the lifeless corpses of my mother, father, and sister. I asked for the estimated time of their deaths. All 3 of them were killed instantly by the collision at 5:32. Holy fuck.
All right, so you know how they do like theories on creepypastas or creepy stories and stuff like that?
Uh-huh.
May I possibly give you a theory for what happened?
Okay, I have a theory too, so I'm curious to hear yours out.
So what I think was they all gave their phones to the mother because she is the keeper of the phones.
Facts.
They have a weird family.
Facts.
And she has a big old booty. Okay, but she put them in her back pocket.
Had a big old booty.
Yeah, had a big. Well, I mean, it's still there. You know.
Yeah. Lifeless.
Anyway,
but it's there.
So a lifeless big old booty. Anyway, so
the name of my next song.
she was like twisting back and forth as she does when she hears Lil Boosie on the radio, and he was on. It was they were playing everybody zoom.
Yeah.
Zoom, you know, and she was like really getting down with it. And so she accidentally sent the same message on all 3 phones. Then she went to correct all 3. She felt really embarrassed and was like, oops, pocket text on all 3 phones, but she was driving at the same time and she crashed the car.
Okay. I was thinking, they're like, hey, let's fuck with our idiot son / brother, right? And let's at the same time text him this exact same shit. They're really focused on doing it. And as they were doing it and they did it, they executed, because they weren't paying attention to the road, they fucking crashed into each other.
Yeah. Also, the reason why all the text got sent later is because they had Verizon, and Verizon has pretty bad service sometimes.
That's facts. Let's be honest here.
I have Verizon. I know what it's like.
Yeah.
I know that struggle.
Yeah.
I think it's time for me to move on. We ready? What are you thinking of these stories so far, buddy? Real scary, huh?
I mean, I like that one better than the first one. That first one was such a just what. The second one, it's kind of like the classic, I like campfire type story.
But who was text?
Yeah, exactly. It follows that recipe.
So I'm hoping, based off of this, I'm going to see if we should just move on to some of the other stories, because this is the spoiler alert. We're reading these off of a list we found. Mm-hmm. So these are ones that we have not read at all. So hopefully this one's good. But I
mean, maybe some of. I mean, we didn't read these ones either. I mean, I didn't read any of them, so I don't know any of these. But
I read all the other ones. All the other ones I am at least sort of familiar with. You know? Okay. So number 3, roommate troubles. This actually happened to me a few years back at the University of Arts in Philadelphia. Oh, damn, we got a real life location.
Nice.
My sophomore year, I roomed with a girl named Kara. Can't trust her. She was a jazz vocalist, but her main interest was opera. We had a small room on the 6th floor of a dormitory called Juniper Hall. Damn, we got a like real super like to the T location here.
Yeah, it's being rather precise, I would say.
The walls were thin, and her late night singing and voice practices would keep me up late. After a month or so of lost sleep, I convinced her to move her late night practices to the music studios in the Miriam Theater building a block away. Around 8 o'clock one evening, Kara announced that she would be practicing late for an upcoming recital and probably wouldn't be home until around midnight. Great, I thought. That means I can go to bed early. I was beat. I had a horrible day in acting studio and was ready to pass out as soon as I had dinner. She said goodnight and left, coffee and sheet music in hand. I made some grilled cheese and soup. Ooh, it better been tomato soup, bitch. Gobbled it down. Just blah, 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 blah.
I love that gobbling sound.
Yeah. And immediately began to prepare for bed. By the time I got out of the shower, my eyelids were so heavy I could hardly brush my teeth because they were weighing my face down.
Because
pulled
they
on my
were
PJs.
covering my teeth, my heavy fucking eyelids. Oh, they sagged so far
like
down my face.
Pounds of lid.
Yeah, they were like barriers in front of my mouth.
I pulled on my PJs and crawled into the top bunk of our bunk bed. Okay, I was out as soon as my head hit the pillow. I should take a second to describe the layout of our apartment.
Yes, please.
When entering the apartment, the bedroom was through a door immediately to the left. Our bathroom was inside the bedroom, just past the bunk beds. University of Arts is nice in the sense that you don't have to share bathrooms.
See, I would have read that as ooh art.
Ooh arts? Yeah, I'm not a layman. I know what ooh arts means. Anyway, I woke up to the sound of the apartment door closing. I opened my eyes and groggily checked my phone. Midnight on the dot. I rolled back over and closed my eyes. I heard Kara enter the room and stop in front of the bunk bed. Checking to see if I'm actually asleep, I thought. She flopped down on the bed below me, which was strange, as she was a stickler for brushing her teeth and washing up before bed. Then again, exams were just around the corner, and we were all exhausted. The mattress below me creaked, and then was silent. I couldn't even hear her breathing. I started to drift off again. I was just on the edge of deep sleep when I was startled awake again by a noise. A key in the lock, the door opening, and Kara entering our apartment humming an opera tune. The mattress below me creaked. That was so scary, bro. So scary, man.
What's your theory?
Honestly, it was the dude from the last one. It was the dude from the last one, and he was just lonely because his family was dead. Dogs are barking.
So he's on the top bunk bed and he heard the mattress. What if he's such a hefty gentleman that he's making, even though he's on the top bunk, he's making the bottom bunk?
Oh yeah, he's just a real fat ass, and he's just like he just shifts a little bit, and the bottom one's like, please don't kill me.
Fuck. Someone's there. Meanwhile, he's still like eating burgers. Oh fuck, who's that?
Okay, I'm gonna give you some choices here. Would you rather read The Portraits or SCP-261?
Okay, SB-261 sounds like fucking VSD, so I'm gonna go with that.
Okay, so just to explain for everyone who isn't aware of what the SCP Foundation is, it's actually some pretty good creepypasta content, if you want to call it creepypasta content, but it is a website. SCP stands for Secure, Contain, Protect, and they are supposed to be people who kidnap or like capture these like strange creatures or like weird artifacts, and they're doing like a scientific analysis of whatever they captured. Now this isn't real, obviously, but
yeah.
they got some pretty good ones, but this is one that I thought was pretty interesting. This is SCP-261. So this is Rav, you want to take it away?
All right. Okay. Object class safe. Special containment procedures. Okay, so this is kind of listed as if it's a item description or like a Pokédex entry. So if it sounds like it's grammatically broken up, I hope you guys understand.
Yeah. Like it's like exactly. Pokédex entry is like the best way. Yeah.
Special containment procedures. Any access to SCP-261 must be approved by staff with level 2 security clearance or higher. Any and all items dispensed by SCP-261 must be recorded along with the amount of money entered and the amount of time elapsed between uses. Currently, SCP-261 may be used only 10 times in a 24-hour period, with no transaction exceeding the equivalent of 500 Japanese yen. Testing approved by Site Command is not under these restrictions. Items dispensed by SCP-261 should be reviewed by site health and safety officials before consumption. Failure to do so releases the Foundation from any obligation regarding negative effects. Items deemed dangerous or useful to research will be confiscated by site security with financial compensation provided in proportion to money spent. Description: SCP-261 appears to be a large black vending machine with no front glass panel and a small keypad on the right side. SCP-261 was recovered in Yokohama, Japan. SCP-261 was brought to the Foundation's attention after investigation of an urban legend about a magic vending machine that was circulating on the internet. SCP-261 was found in a back alley behind a large shopping center, with a handwritten sign saying, "Out of order" in Japanese taped to it. SCP-261 has no marks or identification of any kind, and no locals remember when or how it came to be in its current location. Internally, SCP-261 appears to be a basic vending machine equipped to vend food and beverage items. After a key was made and the front door opened, no abnormal materials were found, and it was determined that SCP-261 has actually never contained any food or beverage items. The keypad, while connected and operating correctly, does not activate any of the dispensing mechanisms. When money is placed into SCP-261 and a 3-digit number is entered on the keypad, SCP-261 will vend a random item. SCP-261 has not accepted any currency other than yen, with rejected currency being deposited in the coin return slot. It is unknown how these items appear. However, SCP-261 will not operate when the door is open or when recording devices are placed inside. The number entered on the keypad has no effect on the item vended, nor has any pattern been detected. Items are always some form of snack food and typically have bright, attention-grabbing packaging. SCP-261 is capable of operating with no external power supply, but operation in this state will cause unstable vending to occur much more quickly than normal. If SCP-261 is used several times in a short period of time and or large amounts of money are entered before an item is vended, SCP-261 will start to dispense bizarre items. While still food, their suitability for human consumption is often non-existent. So we have a log of items vending during testing phase 8. So 800 yen were entered for each item, items being dispensed every 2 minutes. The SCP-261 is attached to power. The first item is a Coke Zero, a can of Diet Coke, packaging in English.
Okay, item number 2 is Cheetos, a small bag of Cheetos snack food, packaging in English.
The third item is Black, a single pack of caffeinated chewing gum, packaging in Japanese.
And the fourth item was Yan, a single Yan cone with peach dipping frosting, packaging in Japanese. The Meiji Seika company does not produce this flavor.
The next item that came out was the Pepsi Dragon Twist, a can of Pepsi Cola with a trace of fruit flavor, packaging in English. Flavor identified as dragon fruit. PepsiCo does not produce this product.
The next item was Dark Side Cola, a can with clear plastic sides, packaging in Japanese. Liquid inside is clear. When opened, liquid appears to react to the air and changes to dark black over a period of several seconds. The black coloration looks like billowing smoke and cannot be reversed. Liquid's taste described as cola with something spicy in it.
My dick. The next item is the Little Bakery, 7 grain. A small tube the size of a candy bar with a green button, made in aluminum, packaging in English. When the top is twisted off, a mass of dough is extruded. Dough contains several enzymes and bacteria that have not yet been identified. On contact with air, these cause the dough to rise and bake, killing the microbes in the process. Produces a small round loaf of bread weighing 250 grams. Taste described as good, but chewy.
Like they're just like, it's all right.
That's good. I mean, it was fucking weird, but it tasted okay.
Yeah. Here we go. All right, so we're getting to the good shit. Lemon clams. Thick plastic baggie with a plastic tube on the side containing water and 12 clams, packaging in Dutch. Sorry, why is that so funny to me? Following on package instructions, the plastic tube was cracked like a glow stick. Liquid in the bag flashed to steam, venting from a hole that popped open in the top of the bag, slightly burning one researcher. Ouchies. Steaming finished after 38 seconds, after which clams were found to be fully cooked and infused with a mild lemon flavor. On investigation, clams match no recorded species.
Okay, so the next one is Diet Ghost, a can containing an instance of SCP-2107. Packaging was in English. Testing done on this instance provided similar results to other contained instances of SCP-2107. This marks the first time SCP-261 has vended another SCP object.
Let's see what that is real quick. Okay, so SCP-2107, it's a Euclid object class, special containment procedures. I'm kind of going through and seeing it's a carbonated based life form. I'm trying to just skim over this and figure out what this is exactly.
Dr. Pepper.
It seems to be a like a ghost in a can. Like it's actually like a spirit in a can.
Ah, that's funny. Canned spirit.
Yeah. So there you go. All right. So moving on. Unknown. A small mesh bag filled with small multicolored pyramids, packaging in an unknown language. Pyramids found to be very hard and unpleasant tasting, compared to chalk in taste and consistency. When placed in hot water, pyramids open and produce strings that quickly dissolve, coloring the water the same shade as the pyramid. Water had no additional taste, but testing revealed a sharp increase in mineral, carbohydrate, and protein content, with several minerals unidentified in the present time. This content was found to be consistent with the recommended daily intake of nutrients for adult humans. Researcher ingesting the water reported stomach cramps 2 hours later, but no other effects.
Okay, then we've got another unknown item. Aluminum box with a small glass window on the side and a large round button on the top. Packaging is in an unknown language. Box is seamless and appears to be filled with small round animals covered in fur, each with 3 small paws and a single large eye. Pressing the button causes the inside of the box to rapidly become superheated, cooking the small animals alive. Muffled noises and scratching were heard for several seconds during the cooking process. After 1 minute 30 seconds, the front panel opens and gives access to the now cooked animals. Professor Kane volunteered to eat the animals with no other researchers willing to do so. Taste described as crunchy and very spicy with a small hint of beef.
Yo, shout out Professor Kane for just being like, yeah, I'll eat them.
Yeah.
All right. So the last entry is unknown. Tall, thin aluminum can. Packaging in an unknown language. Opening the can caused a chemical reaction with the liquid inside the can. Liquid was apparently not intended for an oxygenated atmosphere and detonated violently, causing several injuries and killing 2 researchers. Testing discontinued and area cleared. Testing area observed to smell like citrus for several days.
Okay, and so that's pretty much it for that entry. The way I see it is, okay, what I like about it is that it's creative and the format that they have is very unique as far as creepypastas go, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel like they had so much creativity there with the different foods and everything. I feel like if they had dialed it back a bit, like at the end with the one that kills a couple of researchers, it's just like a little too much. Like, I feel like it would be creepier if it were like more, I don't know, just weird. We're not sure what it is, or like, because they had a bunch of stuff like that already in there.
I actually think that I think it was fine that it killed the researchers, but I think that they should have had it like in the middle. Like they should have had that be like a side note. You know what I mean? Instead of it being like, oh, we stopped.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just like the killing the research. And also some of the descriptions later on were like kind of a little too crazy. I feel like when you're trying to tell something creepy or you're trying to paint a creepy image or whatever, you're kind of walking a fine line between making something just a little kind of cringy and something that is creepy. And to me, with creepy, it's kind of the things that leave some stuff to the imagination in your head. And it doesn't say like, we don't know what it is, because that's also kind of lame, but more like it leads you to specific images in your head, but it doesn't resolve them for you, you know? And it kind of leaves you to your own devices. And that's the kind of stuff I like.
I don't know if it was really even trying to be that creepy, though. It felt like more like it was supposed to be like kind of a dark humor kind of situation. Like the whole thing of like, oh, they just died. Also, it smelled like citrus. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like kind of like
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
You know, I liked it a lot personally, but
I liked it, but not so much. I feel like when I was like the closest thing to that I can think of is my experience as a 8 or 9 year old playing Pokemon for the first time, and you get into the fucking abandoned laboratories at Cinnabar, on Cinnabar Island, where they have the notes about trying to clone Mew. Mm-hmm. And you kind of like walk around and they have like these scattered like entries and everything, and it kind of puts the image of everything together in your head. And I kind of like the scientific entry style. Yeah. In terms of telling a story. So I liked it there. And you're right, it is more of a dark humor kind of thing, and it definitely had a lot of its moments. I just feel like it had like, I really like the format. I think it's really creative. I just feel like they could have taken it a bit further.
The SCP thing is actually got like thousands of entries. Like this is just like one of like thousands of them. But yeah, that was just the one that I enjoyed a lot. There's another one that I'll have to look up later, like in between, probably, that we could go and do that one. But would you like me to take the next one, the portraits?
Yes, please go for it.
Okay, this one's a classic. This is like an old one. It's pretty short. I like it. It's pretty quick though. But so this is the written by Anonymous. There was a hunter in the woods who, after a long day hunting, was in the middle of an immense forest. It was getting dark, and having lost his bearings, he decided to head in one direction until he was clear of the increasingly oppressive foliage. After what seemed like hours, he came across a cabin in a small clearing. Realizing how dark it had grown, he decided to see if he could stay there for the night. He approached and found the door ajar. Nobody was inside. The hunter flopped down on the single bed, deciding to explain himself to the owner in the morning. As he looked around, he was surprised to see the walls adorned by many portraits, all painted in incredible detail. Without exception, they appeared to be staring down at him, their features twisted into looks of hatred. Staring back, he grew increasingly uncomfortable. Making a concerted effort to ignore the many hateful faces, he turned to face the wall, and exhausted, he fell into a restless sleep. Face down in an unfamiliar bed, he turned blinking in unexpected sunlight. Looking up, he discovered that the cabin had no portraits, only windows.
Oh, I'm familiar with this one. It's a classic. That one's great.
Yeah, it's a good one. That was pretty creepy. Like, I like the idea of, because I hate the idea of someone like staring at you through a window. Like, that freaks me out so much.
For sure. And it's like horror, just like comedy, is the the subversive elements are the things that I think help, like, provide impact to the stories, right? It's because you're expecting it, and then it's like, oh shit, the fucked up thing happened earlier, you know? And I think the phone number one tried to do that, where it's like, oh, all this happened, but while all this happening, they were already fucking dead. Or whereas this one, it kind of manages to be subversive and punch you straight in the dick in the best way possible, though. That's a classic. It's probably one of my favorites.
I've got one for you, buddy. Can you please read "Today of All to Blood"?
Okay.
I think you'll love this one.
So it's the day of all the blood, but the in both instances is spelled TEH.
Yeah, I think this is a really good one. It's really well written. I think
it gives me a lot of fucking 2008 nostalgia already.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, for sure, dude.
This is the story of a day where there was all this blood. A man was walking around and blood started coming out of him everywhere. There was so much blood that it filled up an elevator. He went to the store and there was just blood all over the place. People were slipping in it and they were all grossed out. He tried to go swimming and all the sharks went crazy and bitten everybody. He got chased by all the vampires ever. One time the blood got a kid and a dog. At the end of the day, everyone decided they would send him to space so that he would stop getting blood everywhere. But then the blood filled up space and everyone got killed. The scariest part is that the man was you. Or he was a lady if you are a lady and you forgot that this happened. So the reason I was reading it like that as well is because all of it was all caps. But that was great. I've changed my mind about my favorite creepypasta just now. What do you think? Isn't that crazy? I think
it's the best. This is the best one of all, personally.
It reminds me of Blood Boy by Cage.
Oh, yeah, classic. So I found another SCP entry. I went on to like the Reddit and was looking for like the best ones, like while you were reading that great story that was enthralling me. Mm-hmm. And I found another one. Now, I have not read this one, but I'm going to attempt to read it, see where it goes. If they like it, they like it. If they don't, then they can just take it right back, you know?
Again, I like the previous one. I'm sorry if it sounded like I shitted on it. I just like this. When I see something really good and I feel like it can be better, I'm hyper-focused on the potential.
Okay.
rather than
You can write your local congressman about that one, buddy.
I just felt like the execution didn't match the potential that it exhibited.
It's okay, man. It's okay. It's all right.
It was ass. It was ass. It was trash. No.
Okay. So, SCP item number 1782. I'm just going to call this, instead of saying SCP-117, I'm just going to say 1782 because it's easier. I can't, SCP
I should
is
have
hard to
done the
say.
same thing, or like just the SCP, or this SCP. Like, I don't know.
I'm going to say 1782. Okay. Object class, Euclid. I don't know what that means, but apparently it's something. Special containment procedures. The entrance and perimeter of 1782 are to be monitored at all times. Although 1782 has not yet proven itself to be outwardly hostile, the door to the room should be guarded by at least 2 armed personnel at all times. The area is only to be explored by unmanned drones, which have been requisitioned since the events of September 4th and the years blanked out. Description: 1782 is a room measuring 42 or 45 square meters in an abandoned apartment complex located in Kiev, Ukraine. Imprints over the archway entering the room read, you want to take that one, buddy?
Okay, so this is in Kiev, in Ukraine, and okay, I don't know why okay, so in Ukraine, a lot of people speak Russian, but there's also the Ukrainian language. I was under the impression it used the Cyrillic alphabet, but here they're using the Latin alphabet, and it says Jedna Devat Osim D, which translates as 198D. Can I vouch for the Ukrainian being on point here? Yes. I just wasn't familiar. It is correct. It translates correctly, but I wasn't familiar with the Ukrainian.
You weren't expecting it to be in Latin.
To be in Latin. It might be the case. If you're fluent in Russian, you know that Jedna David Osim sounds very similar to Adin David Voisim, and so that's how I know the translation's on point. But I just don't know Ukrainian well enough to know whether they spelled all of this shit correctly or not. But
right.
Go off,
okay.
Queen.
1782's interior changes in appearance every 3 days at 3:12 a.m. The change is instantaneous. 1782 is usually furnished with typical household objects, although 1782 and the objects themselves, when present, are aged significantly with signs of heavy use. The floor plan of the room varies, certain instances having a kitchen, bedroom, and living room, or simply being a large empty space. 1782 occasionally manifests what appear to be sapient entities and fauna. Objects appearing before the change vanish regardless of their proximity to 1782 at exactly 3:12 a.m. Further examples can be found in the area records for this object. Now this is crossed out, but it says 1782 does not appear to have a detrimental effect on subjects entering. Testing subjects in all cases return from the interior of the room with a fear of holes. Exact reasons for this are unknown. So if we want, we can actually trade off these little area records.
Okay, sounds good.
You want to take the first one, or you want me to?
You should go for it first, because you're the man doing the thing.
I'm the big boy.
Go on, big boy.
Area record 1782. Date August 23rd. Years blanked out. Event: room materializes empty. The sound of metal scraping against metal can be heard. A disembodied female voice can be heard repeating the phrase, "Shakes me, makes me lighter," until 3:12 a.m.
Okay, thanks, big boy. Now it's Andre 3K's time. Area record 1782. Date is the 26th of August. Room materializes empty. Sound does not travel through the interior, although upon further inspection, a small area on the left wall of the floor plan emits a faint metallic grating noise.
Creepy. Okay, so area record 1782, date August 29th. Event: an elderly human feeding itself to a group of kakapo, don't know what that is, did not express pain, appeared ambivalent.
All right. Excerpt from interview 1782-831. Date 4th of September. Event: Room appears with 2 partitions, including a bathroom housing only a toilet and a small rectangular entrance accessible through a small hole in the wall. The room is tinted a dull green with what appears to be caked blood and feces on certain sections of the walls. A man in an orange jumpsuit materializes instantly outside of the door to 1782 with a television camera on his shoulder. Attempts to communicate with the entity. Attempts to commute with the entity are unsuccessful. Attempts to communicate with the entity are successful, although unorthodox. The entity asks that Dr. Sanders produce a small television set and stay outside of the cell so that he could record, quote, the girl in the wall and the bottom of the floor, end quote. Those in charge of testing obliged. The following is a transcript of the recording.
Okay, so this is a transcript 1782-904. An RC car with some obstacle clearing capability was requisitioned and mounted with a GPS and video camera to inspect the whole of the September 4th, 1782 instance. The device successfully entered the hole and a live feed confirmed the object recorded by the previous entity. Video feed of the object reveals limbs and head of the object moving slowly up and down. Footage went on steadily past 3:12 a.m., revealing that the object does not disappear during 1782 cycles, although the entrance to its location is no longer present. GPS positioning reveals the location of the entity to be the same location as Dr. Sanders, although testing reveals this to be false. Later GPS readings suggest that the device is located at any mature female within 5 meters of 1782 on any given day. The entity located outside of the door prior to the exploration could not be located. The area was deemed safe, and researcher Breen and Ortega were dispatched 1 hour before 1782's reset time of 3:12 a.m. to receive a DNA sample from the object in the toilet.
All right, so let's read the excerpt the excerpt from DNA recovery of the 1782-9042.
You want to be one person and I be the other person or something?
Yeah, you go ahead, be Breen, I'll be Ortega.
Okay, I'll be researcher Breen. All right, hand me the scalpel now. Breen leaves over the toilet and, appearing startled, falls backwards.
What the hell's wrong?
Thought I saw the damned thing move. Breen rights himself and leans back over the bowl to receive the sample. Breen immediately stands straight up, closes his eyes, and faces Ortega for 5 seconds. Yeah, it's moving. Right. Yeah, okay.
I'll do it.
Researcher Ortega asks Breen to leave the bathroom and leans over the toilet to retrieve the sample. Researcher Ortega exits the bathroom at a brisk pace without the sample.
It looked at me.
All right, let's just put the whole thing in the bag real quick. Researchers enter the bathroom again, Breen holding the sample bag and Ortega using tongs to place the object inside. Researcher Ortega disappears. The sound of water splashing is heard in the toilet. Breen sprints towards the door to 1782 and exits the room.
I think the voices that we picked just kind of pulled everything together.
just pulling shit out the toilet that's alive.
Yeah. Okay, I liked this one better than the other one.
Yeah, this was a real different one. I like the idea of this like real crazy room, like the idea of it being like the object is the room, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It forms these holes.
It sounds kind of terrifying, actually, like going in and coming out and like they have fears of holes and shit like that, you know?
Yeah, for sure. It sounds pretty crazy. All right, well,
yeah.
That was a good one. How about we read Wake Up?
Okay, would you like to take this one, buddy, or
If you don't mind, I've never read this one.
Oh, go for it, buddy.
Wake up, wake up, wake up. I love Bone Thugs and Harmony. It has been reported that some victims of torture during the act would retreat into a fantasy world from which they could not wake up. And this is in bold. So that, like, it's okay. In this catatonic state, the victim lived in a world just like their normal one, except they weren't being tortured. The only way they realized they needed to wake up was a note they found in their fantasy world. It would tell them about their condition and tell them to wake up. Even then, it would often take months until they were ready to discard this fantasy world and please wake up.
Ooh, spooky. Is that from Courage the Cowardly Dog?
I don't know.
Yeah, sounds like some Courage the Cowardly Dog shit, which you just did.
Thanks, man.
So I'm thinking we're all being tortured and we all need to please wake up.
I like stuff like that. It's real short, and I mean they boldened the wake up like instances, which kind of immediately as soon as I saw it, I was like, okay, I know what this is gonna try to do. It was a little too in your face, but I don't blame the story itself. It's whoever chose to bolden the text itself.
I've got
pretty
one.
good. I love that one.
A really good, really bad one.
Okay.
One that I thought was really good when I was like 20 years old. I will be reading Squidward's Suicide, written by Anonymous.
Classic.
Estimated reading time 7 minutes. Strap in, boys. Okay. I just want to start off by saying that if you want an answer at the end, prepare to be disappointed, you son of a bitch, pig fucker. There just isn't one, you fucking asshole. I was an intern. Sorry. I got a little, I like to.
Yeah, you got into the character.
On a little bit,
Right, you're very
I was an intern at
Nickelodeon.
I was an intern at Nickelodeon Studios for a year in 2005 for my degree in animation. It wasn't paid, of course. Most internships aren't. But it did have some perks beyond education. To adults, it might not seem like a big one, but most kids at the time would go crazy over it. Now, since I worked directly with the editors and animators, I got to view the new episodes days before they aired. I'll get right to it without giving too many unnecessary details. They had very recently made the SpongeBob movie, and the entire staff was somewhat sapped of creativity, so it took them longer to start up the season. But the delay lasted longer for more upsetting reasons. There was a problem with the Series 4 premiere that set everyone and everything back for several months. Me and 2 other interns were in the editing room along with the lead animator and sound editors for the final cut. We received the copy that was supposed to be Fear of a Krabby Patty and gathered around the screen to watch. Now, given that it isn't final yet, animators often put up a mock title card, sort of an inside joke for us, with phony, oftentimes lewd titles such as How Sex Doesn't Work instead of Rockabye Bye Valve when SpongeBob and Patrick adopt a sea scallop. Nothing particularly funny, but work-related chuckles. So when we saw the title card Squidward's Suicide, we didn't think it more than a morbid joke. One of the interns did a small throat laugh at it. That's your throat laugh?
Yeah. It's very Pee-wee inspired.
Yeah. The happy-go-lucky music plays as is normal. The story began with Squidward practicing his clarinet, hitting a few sour notes like normal. We hear SpongeBob laughing outside and Squidward stops, yelling at him to keep it down as he has a concert that night and needs to practice. SpongeBob says okay and goes to see Sandy with Patrick. The bubble splash screen comes up and we see the ending of Squidward's concert. This is when things begin to seem off. While playing, a few frames repeat themselves, but the sound doesn't. At this point, sound is synced up with animation, so yes, that's not common. But when he stops playing, the sound finishes as if the skip never happened. There's a slight murmuring in the crowd before they begin to boo him. Not normal cartoon booing that is common in the show, but you could very clearly hear malice in it. Squidward's in full frame and he looks visibly afraid. Sorry. The shot goes to the crowd with SpongeBob in center frame and he too is booing, very much unlike him. That isn't the oddest thing though. What is odd is that everyone had hyper-realistic eyes, very detailed. Clearly not shots of real people's eyes, but something a bit more real than CGI. The pupils were red. Some of us looked at each other, obviously confused, but since we weren't the writers, we didn't question its appeal to children yet. The shot goes to Squidward sitting on the edge of his bed, looking very forlorn. The view out of his porthole window is of a night sky, so it isn't very long after the concert. The unsettling part is at this point, there is no sound, literally no sound, not even the feedback from the speakers in the room. It's as if the speakers were turned off, though their status showed them working perfectly. He just sat there, blinking, in the silence for about 30 seconds. Then he started to sob softly. He put his hands, or tentacles, over his eyes and cried quietly for a full minute more. All the while, a sound in the background very slowly growing from nothing to barely audible. It sounded like a slight breeze through a forest. The screen slowly begins to zoom in on his face. By slow, I mean it's only noticeable if you look at the shots 10 seconds apart side by side. His sobbing gets louder and more full of hurt and anger. The screen then twitches a bit, as if it twists in on itself for a split second and then back to normal. The wind through the tree sounds gets slowly louder and more severe, as if a storm is brewing somewhere. The eerie part is this sound and Squidward's sobbing sounded real, as if the sound wasn't coming from the speakers, but as if the speakers were holes and the sound was coming through the other side. As good as sound as the studio likes to have, they don't purchase the equipment to be that good to produce sound of that quality. Below the sound of the wind and sobbing, very faint, something sounded like laughing. It came at odd intervals and never lasted more than a second, so you had a hard time pinning it. We watched this show twice, so pardon me if things sound too specific, but I've had a lot of time to think about them. After 30 seconds of this, the screen blurred and twitched violently, and something flashed over the screen as if a single frame was replaced. The lead animation editor paused and rewound frame by frame. What we saw was horrible. It was a still photo of a dead child. He couldn't have been more than 6. The face was mangled and bloodied, one eye dangling over his upturned face, popped. He was naked down to his underwear, his stomach crudely cut open and his entrails laying beside him. He was laying on some pavement that was probably a road. The most upsetting part was that there was a shadow of the photographer. There was no crime tape, no evidence tags or markers, and the angle was completely off for a shot designed to be evidence. It would seem the photographer was the person responsible for the child's death. We were of course mortified, but pressed on, hoping that it was just a sick joke. The screen flipped back to Squidward, still sobbing, louder than before, and half body in frame. There was now what appeared to be blood running down his face from his eyes. The blood was also done in hyper-realistic style, looking as if you touched it, you get blood on your fingers. The wind sounded now as if it were that of a gale blowing through the forest. There were even snapping sounds of branches. The laughing, a deep baritone, lasting at longer intervals and coming more frequently. After about 20 seconds, the screen again twisted and showed a single frame photo. The editor was reluctant to go back. We all were. But he knew he had to. This time, the photo was that of what appeared to be a little girl, no older than the first child. She was laying on her stomach, her barrettes in a pool of blood next to her. Her left eye was too popped out and popped, naked except for her underpants. Her entrails were piled on top of her above another crude cut along her back. Again, the body was on the street and the photographer's shadow was visible, very similar in size and shape to the first. I had to choke back vomit, and one intern, the only female in the room, ran out. The show resumed. About 5 seconds after the second photos played, Squidward went silent, as did all sound, like it was when the scene started. He put his tentacles down, and his eyes were now done in hyper-realism like the others were in the beginning of the episode. I like how everyone has hyper-realistic eyes. It's beautiful. They were bleeding, bloodshot, and pulsating. He just stared at the screen as if watching the viewer. After about 10 seconds, he started sobbing, this time not covering his eyes. The sound was piercing and loud, and most fear-inducing of all is his sobbing mixed with his screams. Tears and blood were dripping down his face at a heavy rate. The wind sound came back, and so did the deep voice laughing. And this time, the still photo lasted for a good 5 frames. The animator was able to stop it on the 4th and backed up. This time, the photo was of a boy, about the same age, but this time the scene was different. The entrails were just being pulled out from a stomach wound by a large hand. The right eye popped and dangling, blood trickling down it. The animator proceeded. It was hard to believe. But the next one was different, but we couldn't tell what. He went on to the next, same thing. He went back to the first and played them quicker, and I lost it. I vomited on the floor. The animating and sound editors gasping at the screen. The 5 frames were not as if they were 5 different photos. They were played out as if they were frames from a video. We saw the hand slowly lift out the guts, and we saw the kid's eyes focus on it. We even saw 2 frames of the kid beginning to blink. The lead sound editor told us to stop vomiting all over himself and myself, and there was vomit everywhere. Okay, I added that in just because everyone was wanting to vomit, you feel me? He had to call in the creator to see this. Mr. Hillenberg arrived within about 15 minutes, vomiting. He was confused as to why he called down there, so the editor just continued the episode. Once the few frames were shown, all screaming, all sound again stopped. Squidward was just staring at the viewer, vomiting. I'm just gonna keep doing that. Full frame of the face for about 3 seconds. The shot quickly panned out, and the deep voice said, "Do it. Do it." Is what it said. It said, "Do it." Mm-hmm. And we see in Squidward's hands a shotgun.
Palpatine.
We see in Squidward's hands a lightsaber. He immediately puts the gun in his mouth and pulls the trigger. Realistic blood and brain matter splatters the wall behind him and his bed, and he flies back with the force. The last 5 seconds of the episode showed his body on the bed, on his side, one eye dangling on what's left of his head above the floor, staring blankly at it. Then the episode ends. Mr. Hillenberg is obviously angry about this. He demanded to know what the fuck was going on. Most people, he said heck, but I just, I felt like it needed more.
It was more powerful than that.
Yeah, most people left the room at this point, so it was just a handful of us to watch it again because we're sick fucks. Viewing the episode twice only served to imprint the entirety of it in my mind and caused me horrible nightmares. I'm sorry I stayed. The only theory we could all think of was the file was edited by someone in the chain from the drawing studio to here. The CTO was called in to analyze when it happened. The analysis of the file did show it was edited over by new material. However, the timestamp of it was a mere 24 seconds before we began viewing it. All equipment involved was examined for foreign software and hardware as well as glitches, as if the timestamp may have glitched and showed the wrong time, but everything checked out fine. We don't know what happened, and to this day, nobody does. Nobody does. There was an investigation due to the nature of the photos, but nothing came of it. No child scene was identified and no clues were gathered from the data involved, nor physical clues from the photos. I never believed in unexplainable phenomena before. But now that I have something happen and can't prove anything about it beyond anecdotal evidence, I think twice about things. Credit Anonymous. And there's this really spooky picture of Squidward staring at us with hyper-realistic eyes.
Fuck. Didn't they reference that in an episode on the latest season?
Did they actually?
I believe so, yeah. I saw a little clip of it going viral on Twitter a few weeks ago.
Yeah, so what'd you think of this wonderful story, man?
Yeah, it's great. It's real good. It's classic.
I mean, I after rereading it, obviously, like, it's like super duper like edgy and kind of like the child stuff is like a little hard to get through, I guess. But like, it's not as bad as I remembered it being, if that makes any sense. Like, I could understand why it would creep someone out, especially like a younger person. You know what I mean?
I guess so, yeah. It's just like so many things were already kind of wrong from the start. Where like, the writing team for the movie and the TV show aren't the exact same team, I believe, to begin with. So that already kind of like threw me out of this world,
Yeah.
And then everything else just was it's a little too much. Again, it's like too Hollywood for me. I'm going to read one, a short one.
Go for it, buddy.
This one's titled Seaweed. My grandmother grew up in the slums of Prohibition-era Chicago. Her family lived in a small house near the harbor, and one of her earliest memories was a particularly hot summer when, seeking respite from the heat, she and her sister discovered a seldom-used section of the boardwalk near an abandoned warehouse. Every night, for several weeks, the two girls would make their way down to the docks and sit together on the edge of the pier as the sun went down. My grandmother vividly and for a time fondly recalled the feel of the seaweed between her toes, and she and her sister dangled their feet into the murky water. It wasn't until years later that she returned to the pier and found that the warehouse had been demolished. Curious, she made an inquiry with the Department of Planning and Development. Apparently, the warehouse had been owned for a time by the mob, who was using it as a base of operations for a local prostitution racket. It had only been uncovered when an associate began disposing of rival hookers by fitting them with concrete shoes and dumping them into the harbor. Investigating officers had recovered nearly 24 bodies from the waters of a secluded pier nearby. How had the bodies been discovered? A passing fisherman spotted some of the victims' hair floating near the surface of the water like seaweed.
Yo, that's pretty good, man. I like that one.
Yeah, that one's
That's
good.
spooky. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine like, oh, I love the seaweed, and it turns out to be fucking hooker hair?
Yeah, I want to see a hooker's hair that looks like seaweed in the water. I'll be completely real with you, but
I don't think that it was like they ever saw
at
it.
it.
Though.
They
That's
just
the point,
felt
right?
it.
They just feel it. Yeah,
exactly.
Oh, I love the seaweed tickling me, and it's just like HIV invested hair.
I love this hooker hair tickling my toes. Yeah, that's great.
Tickling me taint.
Tickling my taint.
Yeah. I would like to close out if that's okay.
Oh, please do.
I'm gonna just read a real good classic.
A hood classic, perhaps?
Yeah. All right. So, are y'all ready?
Sure.
So you're with your honey and you're making out when the phone rings. You answer, and on the other voice is like, "What are you doing with my daughter?" You tell your girl, and she says, "My dad is dead." Then who was phone?